To whom it may concern. It happened in October last year. I know it was a Thursday because it's the day I get my pension. I also buy my chicken. I can make a chicken pie, a casserole and some soup with just one piece. It's the only day I go down into the village. It's quite a climb up the track to this little house. Well, I was in the kitchen preparing my supper when there was a ring at the doorbell. No one ever calls, so I was rather surprised. I opened the front door and there he was, smiling at me as he used to, except his teeth were different. The brown front giraffe ones had been replaced by implants. Later I remembered that's how he used some of the money that had been put in by my parents, supposedly for an annex for them. Several £1,000s they cost. My mouth must have fallen open because he asked if I was surprised to see him. I didn't answer. I tried to close the door, but he put his foot in the way. I have a proposition to put to you, he said. I told him there was nothing he could propose that would be of any interest to me. But he persisted. He pulled out a brown envelope from his pocket. I told you I have a proposition for you, he said. I told him that if he had anything to say to me, he should get a solicitor to write to me. He'd taken a step back, and so I closed the door in his face. I remember returning to the kitchen and putting the kettle on to make some tea. I was shaking. Maybe the tea would help. The shock of his betrayal had sent my mother into dementia. Court had said it was the oldest trick in the book. But as he hadn't signed a deed of trust, there was nothing we could do about it. Maybe the tea would help. The shock had pushed my mother into dementia. It was not going to go the same way. I got back to preparing the chicken. And then it was 6 o'clock and I thought I'd go into the other room and put the television on. I could hear it through the door and it would take my mind off things. So I went into the other room. And there he was, sitting in the armchair. I'd left the French door open because I'd opened it to let in some air. And he'd come in and closed and locked it behind him. I told you I had a proposition for you, he said. And his voice and tone were the same as he used when he told my parents that he would use that money to build an annex for them. I walked over to him and slid the paring knife into his neck, quite hard. It went in very easily, easier than cutting up the chicken really. There was a great spurt of blood across the room. His hand went up instinctively as if to stop the bleeding, but it was too late. I think as well as the jugular, it must have got into the windpipe because he was making this strange gurgling noise. He tried to stand, his face went ashen and his knees buckled under him. Strange thing was he was still smiling, but it was more of a grimace really. I stepped round him and drew the curtains. I picked up his car keys from the coffee table and then I went out of the room, closing the door. I washed my shoes and mopped up the footprints. Then I washed the knife and my hands and finished cutting up the chicken. The shaking had stopped and I felt better than I had for a long time. While the chicken was in the oven, I took his car keys and went out and put his car in my garage. It was a green car. It wasn't the ostentatious Porsche that he used to have. I suppose she must have thrown him out and he was trying to propose some financial deal with me, thinking I was as naive as I used to be. I want to write this down just in case in the future I suffer with some mental problem. For months I've expected the knock on the door. Nothing has happened. Perhaps he was as friendless as he deserved to be. Certainly no one seems to have missed him. I light incense a lot. It masks a smell. I've got used to it by now. It isn't really very inconvenient. I have a television in my bedroom and I never liked the three-piece. He chose it.
The car's familiar, over that way, up a hill, and then there's a sort of narrow track.
Thank you very much.